okay? Am I loud enough, clear enough? Just let me know in the chat box would be great. I see some people are giving little ticks. Yes, fine, okay, fantastic. Brilliant, okay, well, yeah, thanks a lot, Henry, for the introduction, and thanks a lot. I have a quick question for you. Henry said that we're going to start with a couple of polls. So what I'd like you to do is to use the poll function, which is just on the left-hand side beneath my screen. I can see lots of people are clicking the green tick rather than the red X. But we have a lot of people coming through. I'll give it another moment just so everyone can have a chance to click through. Interestingly enough, I just saw that the tick function, I'll stop it here and I'll just give you a look at what I'm looking at. So there we go, and we can show you the results that I've seen. If we give me a second. So here in the middle, we can see that, yeah, 41% of people have said yes, they do teach English, 15% no or not yet. A number of you haven't clicked it yet, so just to remind you where the poll function is, I've turned it off at the moment, but you can access it. It's normally beneath your name in the participants list. To the right, there's a little option with a tick box. So, yeah, so that's, first of all, that's an interesting observation. To follow on from that, can you tell me where you are? So to let you know where I am, I'm in Munich at the moment today. It is 4 minutes past 11 here in Munich, in Germany. Maybe in the chat box you could let me know where you are. And maybe even what time it is as well. Russia, Poland, it's 11. Let me see, lots of things coming in the chat box. Serbia, Beijing, 6 p.m. in the evening. Very good, hope you've had a good start to the week. Beijing's almost finished their working day. Vienna, same time as yours. St. Petersburg in Russia. Okay, so I'd say given the nature of the time that we have now, we probably have more people in the room from let's say from Europe or places east of Europe, because places west of Europe are still in bed, I guess. But I think this is a good demonstration of I guess how mobile business is. Just to come back to my opening slide, the mobility of business English. So we've got people here from all over the world, and many of you are already involved in teaching business English, which means there is a need for business English in the countries that you're in. So business English is already the global language. And what I'd like to do with you for the next 40 minutes or so is go on a little journey and talk through, first of all, stepping back from business English. Let's just think a little bit about society. How society has changed and is changing in terms of how we as people interact with each other. And how technology has been aiding those changes. A very good example is this webinar right now today. Webinars have not been around for very long, and 10, 15, 20 years ago they might have been seen as something very futuristic that you only see in the movies. Yet now we have a couple of hundred people here in the room and we're all interacting and communicating with each other. This is an example of how an advancement in technology has changed the way that we, as members of now the global society, can interact with each other. So first of all, we'll have a look at that, and we'll think about how these changes in interactional patterns can actually and should actually have an effect on how learners learn, and therefore, a step further than that, how we as teachers and trainers can help our learners better achieve their goals by potentially adapting what we do and how we do it. So we'll move on to think about the implications all of this has on business English training. We'll have a look at some options that are currently available for addressing these on-the-go needs of our learners. People are becoming more mobile, business is more global. And then we'll wrap up by having a look at mobile devices and how mobile devices can be used both in and out of the classroom, both trainer-driven and autonomously, to help learners get the most out of their learning using or bearing in mind these changes in technology and society that we're going to start off with. So let's move on and have a think about the first point. So first of all, in terms of how we interact as a society, I've mentioned before webinars are something very new. Obviously, internet and email have been around for quite a while, first in businesses, then at home. I remember when I got my first email account. It was 1996, I think, which comparatively speaking is not a very long time ago. And then I didn't even have a computer at home. I was in university. I was using the computers there. Skype feels like it's been around for a long, long time, but it's actually only been around for 10 years. iPhones seem to be or were the benchmark for mobile phone communications. It seems like they've been around for ages. It's only been 6 years since the iPhone 1 was launched. WhatsApp, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but this is it's an online app for sending messages, videos, texts, audio to each other. I was reading there on their page the other day that they have, I think, 12 million messages sent per day or something like that. So Google Glass, you've probably heard about this, wearing glasses to have an interface, a computer interface with your world and online at the same time. Very kind of scientific, well, sci-fi movie sort of stuff, but it's now part of our everyday lives. Smart cars are coming out soon. I've seen promotional videos for these, in which you might be driving down the road in your car, and your car is connected to the internet completely, and it knows that you're about to drive past, for example, a theater that you bought tickets to last month to see a particular show with a particular actor, and the car's interface will be able to check the program of the theater, see the same actor is in a new show next month, and ask you if you want to buy tickets. And you can just say, yeah, buy me some tickets, and your car is connected to your credit card and goes and buys the tickets in the part of the theater that it knows you like. So, yeah, this is all fantastic stuff. It's coming really soon. What else is next is the question. The speed at which technology has been advancing has been amazing, and resist it or love it, it is changing the way that we interact with each other as humans in society. And it's changing the way that we buy things. It's changing the way that we travel, for example. Henry mentioned that I just got back from the BSIG, the Business English Conference, there in Prague yesterday. And one of the cool things about traveling these days with a smartphone is that you can get your boarding pass on your phone. I don't know if you can see that. There you go. You get a little QR code, and you don't need paper anymore. You just scan your phone as you're getting on. So I could check in for my flight on the way to the airport, and then walk straight through security and straight on the plane without actually interacting with a human being. So is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? Whether it is or not is not really the issue right now, but the fact that it's happening is what I'd like us to think about this morning, and then what this means for us as teachers and trainers. So let's think about what the message of what I'm trying to say is. Here's another interesting fact, and again, the source is actually not the most up-to-date source. So I'm sure that the percentages have gone even more in the upper levels. 50% of the world's population is under 30, and 96% of those have joined the social network. So in life, people are interacting with each other a lot more. They don't have to send letters and postcards to connect with their friends. They can do it from their mobiles, on the move, on Facebook, or wherever they are. And so life has become social. Life has become more interconnected. Life has become more dynamic with on-the-move communication with services, with friends, and things like that. And so learning itself needs to do this too in parallel. rather than remaining in more traditional classroom-only environments where interaction with learner and teacher or trainer only happens in a physical environment and only at irregular times. Life is totally interconnected. People connect and socialize with each other all the time. So learning needs to kind of move along with that. And obviously, I'll come to in a moment how this then connects with business as well. But to take stock a little bit of how learning is changing and how these changes in technology and changes in society have had an effect on how people these days not only interact or check in for flights or things like that, but how they get information, how they access information, and how they hold on to it and learn it and want to use it later. And so there's a lot more emphasis these days on being able to do things successfully rather than just knowing about things that they might want to do. I saw a talk a while ago where the speaker gave an example of, he was speaking to his son about the importance of learning the names of the rivers and the mountains in North America. And his son was being quite dismissive about this, saying, oh, well, I'll never need to know that stuff. And whenever I do need to know it, I can just Google it. So the ability to find that information in Google or online at a just-in-time moment was more valuable and interesting to this guy's son than the need to have the information stored up here in his head like his father would have had, or like I had when I went to school. I can tell you the names of the rivers in Ireland and things like that. I don't know how absolutely useful it is right now, because if I really need to know something else, I can just look it up online. So wanting quick results rather than spending a long time learning things without the payback yet on the learning is essential. It's very interesting for today's society. Learning by doing things. You know, if at first you don't succeed, try again. If you fail, try again. You can see this in computer game development, how that has changed over the last 20 or 30 years. Is that a lot of computer games these days they involve very short, very quick levels, which have a very trial and error approach to it. Just think of the Angry Birds phenomenon that spread the world a couple of years ago. Short, quick bites, trial and error. If you don't succeed, try it again. Get a quick win, get a quick result, as I've said, quick results. Let me try and find my little pointy hand so I can point at things. There we go. People get bored easily. I get bored easily. And people are generally involved in more multitasking these days. They can watch TV and have a chat with the person on the sofa beside them and be on Facebook all at the same time, and apparently be able to give full attention to all of these three things. According to my wife, she's able to do it anyway. I still sometimes prefer to just focus on one thing or the other. But it's not about what I want to do. It's about what my learners are doing and how they're interacting with the world around them. And I, as a teacher and a trainer, need to adapt to them rather than force them to learn the way I learned or the way I want to teach. So this is also an important kind of underlying thing to adaptations in society. Learning is much more visual with the advance of multimedia, and as I said before, mobile devices, videos. You can bring video into the classroom much more easily, or use devices to communicate with each other more easily. But also it needs to be non-linear. Rather than starting from A and going in a straight line to B, the learners might want to divert here down to A.1, A.2, A.3 before they actually get over to B. So there needs to be opportunities for modular learning with choice and flexibility, and also collaborative learning. People are because society is much more interactive these days, people can have better opportunities to collaborate and learn together, rather than just a top-down approach from teacher to learner. Learner learns as an individual, does homework at home as an individual. There's much more opportunities these days for collaboration, and so I think we should also be bearing that in mind. Excuse me just a second. So I've referred to my learners a couple of times, by the way, and I just realized I forgot to kind of introduce myself at the beginning. I've said I'm based in Munich. I am a business English and communication skills trainer, and I primarily now work in companies helping business people who need to perform internationally to be more successful with their communication in project work or with various business skills and things like that. In the past, I have taught in universities, and I've also taught general English in summer schools. So when I'm speaking about my learners, I'm thinking about business people, but it's also not different for if you're in university or third level education. Many of the things I'm saying about how people interact are the same, you know? So let's think about the challenges that this then presents for us as teachers and trainers if our students are the type that are very able to multitask in a learning environment. They're looking for a media-rich experience with randomized, modular access to their learning in interactive and network ways. And we as teachers may be more used to teaching the way that we ourselves were taught at school. At least I know when I was at school, we were given, you know, one task and then the next task, and then the next task. And so there was a very linear progression of single tasks. Obviously, technology and media hadn't come that far, so it was largely text-based, textbooks in school, writing on the board, writing things basically, not that much input of other sources, perhaps a cassette player. Course books and courses were organized in linear, logical, sequential ways. But what happens if I'm working with a book and my learners need to prepare for an important presentation next month? But we're only on Unit 2 in the book, and presentations doesn't come up until Unit 5. Do I say, I'm sorry, we can't do that because it doesn't come up in the book for another 2 months? Or do I say, okay, rather than focusing on the linear sequential progression of something, let's focus more on your needs as you have them right now and change the system a little bit. And yes, we'll deal with your presentations. We'll help you prepare for that, because at the end of the day, you have a business need to fulfill, and being successful in business is more important than following the linear progression, for example, of the book. That's not to say that books are obviously, of course, not good for structure and pedagogical progression. It's a matter of finding a balance between these two elements. And so this definitely provides a challenging environment for us as teachers and trainers to be able to deliver, the type of learning that our learners might best learn through. So there's an interesting overview which I got from Jane Hart's website. You can see down at the very bottom there. Jane Hart, she's got a website and a company and a blog about social learning in the workplace. It's nothing to do with English language teaching, but it is about learning in social environments. And she's come up with this very, very interesting model, which does look quite complicated at first, so I'd like you to just focus on the black circles, is that she's seeing a move from stage 1, or the stage that she's called stage 1, where training is in classrooms, it's more formal, and it's being led or driven by teachers or trainers, to training becoming less formal. There is less top-down control, as you can see at the top here. Top-down control means the teacher is the knowledge owner and gives the information down from the top to the learners. And we see as we move across from stage 3 over to stage 5, there's a lot more bottom-up control, meaning the learners are driving the content a lot more. The learners' needs are driving what is being learned and what is being taught. In the green section in the middle, learning is becoming less formal and more informal, so it can happen at any time, in any way, with different interactional patterns. And the role of the teacher is less as the top-down controller, as you see in the top left, and more to, if you look in the bottom right, the blue bit, more as a role of a facilitator or a colleague almost. UGC stands for user-generated content. So user in this case means the learner. So shifting from a much more rigid, linear system with the teacher as the knowledge owner to a system where the learners themselves are controlling the what is being learned, how it's being learned. They're learning in more informal ways, and then we, the teachers or the trainers, are being the people who keep the glue together and facilitate the learning, facilitate that the learning can happen by creating learning environments which will best meet their needs. So I think this is a really interesting approach. As I said, it hasn't come from business English or from English training. It's come from the corporate training world. But I think we can learn a lot by just reflecting on this. And so coming on to business now, moving from society, slowly coming into business, how is business becoming more mobile? Well, people are changing jobs more frequently than they did in the past. I know that in some cultures, people have always been, or for the last 20 years, have been changing jobs very frequently. In other cultures, like in Germany, for example, where I live, I first came here 13 years ago, and it was a lot less common to switch jobs then. It is becoming more common to switch jobs more regularly now, and so society here is changing too. It might be happening in your country too. The nature of business becoming more global, companies wanting to become more international, getting involved in joint ventures with each other, cross-cultural, global, multinational, virtual teams. People no longer need to be in the same physical place to work on a project together. It's a fantastic way for companies to use the knowledge resources that they have around the world to get the best people they can working on specific projects. But then it means that people are communicating in virtual ways with each other. They're having virtual meetings. There might be a lot of email and telephone communication, but they might not necessarily see or meet each other. Maybe they will. Maybe the virtual team people, to jump to the other side, they're working from home, for example. A number of people might do 2 or 3 days in the office and 2 or 3 days from home. I know people in London who do this, and they don't actually travel outside of the country. It's just because they live half an hour outside of London that they have a situation in which they can do this. So what happens if they have their English training lesson on a Tuesday, but Tuesday is the day that they're working from home? Do they miss their lesson, or can we provide an opportunity for them to be able to still take part in training? I have colleagues here in Munich who had that situation, and what they've been able to do is to have a live training session in the company in Munich, and the guys that are working from home on those days get beamed into the room on a projector with speakers. So it's kind of half live, half virtual. Maybe not too unlike the picture in the bottom left, except the guy on the screen would be at home rather than in another meeting room. But that's something else that you can do as well. Is you can, I've seen through my online community on Twitter and Facebook and things like that, I've seen a lot of collaboration between business English teachers where they might have done what's being done in the bottom left corner here. Is one business English class in one country might get beamed into another business English training session in another country so that they themselves can collaborate and communicate and learn from each other. Business trips, it might depend on the economic situation in your country, whether they are rising or falling, because business trips can be expensive, but because of the nature, again, of business and globalization, companies are expanding more and more, and in many cases they find they need to expand in order to survive in their local markets. And this is then leading people to having virtual offices, which is where they don't even necessarily have a home office or an office in the office, but they work from wherever they physically find themselves to be, and you can quite easily do that with maybe just a laptop and a mobile phone. So I know that when I'm traveling, if I have my phone and my laptop, I can work from wherever I am as well. As a teacher and a trainer, I can deliver training from wherever I am if I have my webcam and an internet connection, if needs be. And that can be to a physical group or to a virtual group. So kind of tying these changes from changes in technology and changes in society into business, and how business is just a different world than what it was 10 or 15 years ago even. We need to think of, well, what can we do proactively as teachers and trainers to really address this and help our learners and our clients and our students really get the most out of their opportunities to learn. And so I've kind of come up with just a very short list of things that I think that we can do to help all of this move forward. And it really comes down to us being the agents for change, or at least us trying to move things forward and help to almost either change or react to a learning philosophy and a teaching philosophy, which gets learners very much more aware of their responsibility for learning. And this is the contrast to school environments, secondary school and things like that, where in many cases the responsibility for successful learning lies on the teacher and not on the learners. But in business English, everyone is an adult. They're all responsible for themselves in their lives. And so we really, I do my best to try and make that shift with my learners, be more of a facilitator, be more of a business partner with them, and make it very clear to them that they have the responsibility for their learning, and to really encourage them to learn autonomously, to learn on the move, to learn in social situations, to connect with the other people from the training sessions, from the classes, so that learning for them is not just a single event that happens in a physical place once or twice a week with a physical person who is instructing them in a top-down way. So this is kind of a type of philosophy I try to encourage learners. I think adapting in these ways will help us as teachers and trainers to very much adapt to these changes in society and how people are just interacting with each other in society. Learning needs to be very measurable in terms of with people who are already in work, with business people. It needs to be very measurable in terms of the success they're getting in their jobs. Is this learning helping me to be more successful in my job? So the doing rather than knowing. Or am I just learning things that I might possibly need at some point in the future? Who knows? And again, business people are much more likely to learn and to put effort into things that they can see are giving them measurable success in their working lives. The other points I think I've kind of touched on already. I don't need to read down through all of them. And I guess I put that image in there to get us just thinking about the fact that not next week or not next year, but the time is now, because society has changed and is continuing to change. And the longer we wait, the more the gap is going to be greater and more difficult for us as teachers and trainers to kind of catch up. So these are kind of the points that I wanted to make in terms of society and technology changing, and then business being more mobile and learning needing to adapt to this mobility of business and of business people and of interactional patterns in groups. So just to check that you're still with me, can I get a smiley face from everyone, please? You should see the smiley face somewhere beneath your name. So I'm seeing loads of smiley faces coming up, which is great. I did become aware a few minutes ago that I was speaking very quickly. You might have noticed I tend to speak quickly when I get excited about things, and I do feel very passionate about this. If at any point I'm speaking too quickly, maybe you could put up your hand or something for me, and I'll maybe get a big symbol or something on my phone. I do see one or two hands up now, I think. So I'll try and slow it down a little bit. But let's move on then to some more kind of practical side of things. So moving from the theoretical of these societal and technological changes, how business is becoming more mobile, and then how all of these can kind of come together and what effect they have for us as teachers and trainers. Let's have a little look at what we can use to help us in this situation. So first of all, I'd like to just have a quick look at current materials that are out there at the moment, in addition to standard printed course books, is that we're seeing lots and lots of new digital products coming out all the time. You've got e-workbooks, which learners can upload to their computers or to their tablets or their smartphones and continue learning, watching videos, reading articles, doing activities while they're on the move, and not specifically only when they're at home with a computer. You've got teacher and group connected resource centers, so online environments where learners and teachers can actually communicate with each other in forum type environments. They can leave messages for each other, they can upload their documents, the trainer or teacher can give activities for the learners to do. So if they, in between their face-to-face training sessions, or even if they don't have training sessions, so for example, there's Macmillan English Campus is where you can do these types of things. Learning on the go, many of the e-workbooks that I mentioned, I'll show you on the next slide a couple of examples. They have features on them in which you can put the entire audio track of your course and the videos onto mobile devices so that learners can continue learning while they're actually on the move. Something I always say to my learners is to use your dead time intelligently. And so dead time for me is a time that you absolutely have to be doing something, but you could also be doing something else at the same time. So an example of this is commuting to work. If you have to sit on the underground or the train to get to work for half an hour each day, then to me, that's half an hour in and half an hour back that you could use learning something. And that could be on your mobile device. It could be watching a video from your course, or it could be reading an article that you're going to present in your course. If you drive to work, obviously you're not going to be watching videos and reading articles, but that doesn't mean that you can't be listening to things. Audio tracks from your course, or just podcasts, audio interviews, things like that. And if you want to go more low-tech, many of these online workbooks, or just courses or places like One Stop English, they have lots of options to just print things off as well. So you can print off activities, articles, things like that. So if you don't have the technology, or your learners don't, or maybe you're going to be in an offline environment like on a plane or something like that, you can bring the paper around with you. So just a couple of very quick examples of current materials that are out there at the moment, I guess specifically from Macmillan. You've got those of you who are familiar with the General English Adult Course Global. Recently this year there was a new series of business e-workbooks brought out to accompany the global series of course books. I'm very happy to have been involved in the writing of that. And so there's an interface where the learners can get a lot of business articles, vocabulary, videos, audio, language practice. There's the print and work feature I was speaking about before. On the move feature where you can put all the audio, the video, everything onto your mobile device. The Business 2.0 course series also has e-workbooks to go with them. And as Henry mentioned earlier on, I just got back from the BSIC conference in Prague yesterday, and that was where Macmillan just launched In Company 3.0, the third edition of the course series. This is the lovely Laura Hudson from Macmillan modeling the books for me. I took the picture myself because the books are so hot off the press. I don't have any other images of them. But they're going to do something different. They're going to have an online workbook rather than an e-workbook. So it'll basically live in the cloud. So it'll be very kind of forward thinking and interactive together with the teacher as well in the resource center. So all of these things address these changes in how learners are learning and need to learn, and in parallel with how business is becoming more mobile and people are not only learning anymore in a face-to-face environment, and should be using the time in between face-to-face learning sessions to continue learning, so that learning never stops. It's not just something you do on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays at 2 p.m., but it should be something that you're always doing. And coming back to what I said, that business people, they want measurable and immediate success. They want relevant input. So if they're getting those things, then they will be naturally motivated to want to learn all the time, or at least to have the mindset that they can always learn all the time because they have the opportunities to do so. So moving on to mobile devices, and how they can help enhance learning. I've mentioned a couple of times already that many of these e-workbooks and things, you can put them onto your mobile devices. So I'm going to give you a couple of ideas. I'm going to run through some of these pretty quickly because I'm keeping an eye on the time, and I told Henry that I'd try and finish at 1:45, and timing is always my nemesis. So I'll try and go through it quickly without speaking too quickly. But yeah, I've been speaking for quite a while now, so let's move on and think of a couple of questions for you. So first of all, mobile devices doesn't only mean a mobile phone. It can mean any of these things. These are all mobile devices, and they can all be used in your training or by your learners out of training in ways which can help them to continue learning or to improve their learning. So very quickly, let's just do a quick poll. I'm going to turn the poll back on again. I think. Is the poll there? The poll should be there. So you're looking for a little tick box, and you can tick yes or no. And I will try and make this visible for you as well, so we can see them coming in. So we can still see, because I've published them, the numbers have fixed, but I can see on my other screen that the numbers are still coming in, that lots of people tend to have mobile phones. There's a couple who don't, but don't worry, those of you who don't have one, if there's an opportunity for your learners to have one, then many of these ideas that I'm going to give you now in a moment will still be valid and will still work for them. So let me just remove those. I've got another question for you. So do your learners have mobile phones? Let me see if I can clear the results of the last poll quickly. There's a slight time delay. Okay, so I just cleared the results of the last poll, so let's go with the question again. Do your learners have mobile phones? Again, I'm seeing lots and lots of yeses coming through. There's an ever so slight time delay with when I click publish on the results and the results come up on the screen, so I'll just tell you, I can see we've got 215 yeses and 1 no. So it's overwhelmingly yes, your learners have mobile phones. So let's stop that poll again. I'm going to ask you another quick question. So let me clear the results first. We've got one more question, I think. Can these mobile phones access the internet? So again, many phones these days are known as smartphones. I guess they're smart because they can access the internet, or at least that's the definition of it. Again, overwhelmingly, we've got over 200 yeses with about 12 no's. Many of these ones have cameras. They might have audio recording features, even if they can't access the internet. And so there are lots of things you can do with mobile phones that can or can't access the internet, that do have a camera or maybe an audio recording feature. And it's not absolutely necessary for you to have one or for everyone in the class to have one. But maybe if there's one between 2 or 3, there's a lot of cool things you can do with them. I'm going to run through a very quick whistle-stop tour of a few things that you can do with your learners. First of all, let's make a distinction between different types of apps you can get on mobile phones. This is a distinction that I heard at the IATEFL conference. It could have been Gavin Duden who spoke about it about 2 years ago. The difference between mobile applications for language learning, so those that have been created with learning a language as the goal of the app, and other apps which can be very good for using the language. So apps for language learning could be, for example, the Sounds Chart app from Macmillan. There is another one called Business English, which is quite cool, where it's just a simple kind of a vocabulary app. Where was your product? And then it's A, B, C, D, manufactured, to manufacture, manufactured, manufacturing. So it's a kind of a multiple choice option. This is kind of a fun one because the more questions you get right, you can upgrade your rank in the company from trainee to manager up to president. Here's a flashcard app for Business English, which is good for people living in Germany, because you can. It's basically like the traditional version of paper where you've got a flashcard with the writing in English on one side and the writing in your learner's first language on the other side. But instead of having to bring around a big box of flashcards, the learners can now just install a little app on their phone. So this is an example, a couple of examples of mobile applications for language learning. Some examples of mobile applications for language usage. I teach a lot of engineers, and so the engineering handbook has got thousands of definitions of engineering terms in English. There's a unit converter tool which can convert pretty much any unit into any other unit, hundreds of them, all relating to engineering relating things, like here the cooling rate conversion table or the density conversion table. Again, I'm not an expert in these things, but my learners are. And so these types of apps in English can help them practice their English in a work-relevant context, so they can refresh the vocabulary so that they have it when they need it in their business contexts. There's another app, where was it gone to on the next slide or the next page, I think. We'll move on quickly. Yeah, an interesting other kind of comment that has held a lot of weight with me in the last year and a half or so as well, is that rather than us having to know lots and lots and lots of apps to show our learners, why don't we teach our learners to find ones and evaluate them and then recommend them to each other? So ones that are useful and beneficial to them. So that we're not, what we might think is amazing, they might not think is amazing, but what they think is amazing might actually be more amazing or more useful for the others in their classes. So thinking about what can you recommend, what can your learners recommend? There's video presentation apps like from TED.com where your learners can watch presentations on their devices. There's the engineering one that I mentioned a moment ago. There's one for HR that I use regularly, HR management. Not an app for learners, but the One Stop English app has got lots of nice sound effects that I like to use in class when I'm timing things or ending activities. And so kind of slowly wrapping up, it's not just about apps, it's about what you can also do with your mobile devices. You can take photos with them. Photos of work-specific or work-relevant things in the company or out of the company. You can use the audio dictation devices, recording devices. Even the older mobile phones have those. And you can record simulated meetings or simulated telephone calls that your learners are doing in their training sessions, and then play it back for them to self-evaluate or possibly even write out a script so that they themselves can give themselves feedback. We become more of a facilitator of learning rather than directive and prescriptive. They can practice reading. If it can access the internet, they can read the news or articles on their commute. They can watch videos, as I said, with TED Talks. And something for you, if you're a trainer and you have a mobile phone and it has a camera never forget that you always have a camera with you in your pocket. So anytime you see anything at all that might be interesting and useful, take a photo of it. A very quick example of what I really like to use, I've been using it for a few years now actually, is in Zurich Airport I saw these tubs of Nutella, this kind of chocolate kind of paste that you can put on bread. And it doesn't look very remarkable there, but when you put something that has scale into the picture, you can see that these tubs of Nutella were in fact 5-kilo tubs of Nutella. Now, I've never seen a 5-kilo tub of Nutella before. I thought it was really interesting from a marketing point of view that the 5-kilo tub was more expensive than 20 250-gram tubs. So what does that tell you about marketing and pricing and novelty and PR? And so I use this picture with my marketing guys to just discuss these things. So never forget, you have a camera, you've got the technology in your pocket. So to just wrap up then quickly, there is no one-size-fits-all to everything that I've been saying because your context is going to be different to mine, but it's kind of undeniable that society globally is changing because of advances in technology. Whatever speed they are advancing at in your culture or in your society, technology is bringing things forward. It's changing the way that people interact with each other in social situations, and learning is becoming more social. Business is becoming more mobile, and learning is becoming more mobile. So we, as teachers and trainers, we need to acknowledge that and adapt to that, and not get stuck into the possible situation of teaching and training our learners the way that we ourselves were taught and trained when we were at school. Because the world has changed, the world is different. So I guess that kind of brings me to the end. Sorry if I've gone a couple of minutes over, but I hope you found the session interesting. I hope it gave you a bit of food for thought as to how you do what you do in training, and some things that you might change or bring forward and move on. This is the first session of the business session, as Henry said before. I'm going to hand back to Henry in a moment just to say, please, connect with me if you like on LinkedIn, so I can place who you are. Let me know you were in this webinar, or follow me on Twitter. I tweet about business training, communication skills, training related issues, things like that. Other than that, I'd say you can probably go and get a cup of tea in a moment, or a drink or something like that. Karen Richardson is going to be back in this room in about 10 minutes, and she's going to be speaking about meeting the challenge of bringing variety into the business English classroom. And Allison is going to be on after her in the same room. So you don't need to go anywhere, you can just stay in this room. And I'll hand back to Henry. And I say thanks very much for all of you guys for coming along this morning, this afternoon, this evening, whatever time it is where you are, and hopefully see you online or maybe face-to-face at some other training sessions in the future. Henry?
Thank you, Mike. Great job. Thanks for getting the conference underway for us in such great fashion. It was a brilliant talk. I hope you enjoyed it all. Don't forget, you can follow Mike on Twitter, which is probably the best place to put any questions you have to him.
Yes.
And don't forget to tweet under our hashtag too. That's MOC2013, which I'm just posting now. As Mike was saying, we've got another talk coming up now. Well, starting in roughly 10 minutes with Karen Richardson, who is just getting set up on the system. And there'll be a brief break while we get her slides up on the whiteboard. So now's the time to go away quickly and grab yourself a quick drink. Be back with us in 5 to 10 minutes when the next talk will be starting, and that will be on the topic of meeting the challenge of bringing variety into the business English classroom. So it should be another great talk for you all to enjoy. See you shortly, but do stick around here if you want to as well, and feel free to continue the conversations you're having with each other in the chat box as well. Thanks.
Great. Thanks a lot again, Henry, and see you guys all soon. Bye for me.
Thanks, Mike. Bye.
online webinar. And I've noticed that it's actually, if you're in the UK, it's 11 a.m. and it's the 11th day of the 11th month. So this is quite a memorable time for my my first talk. So let's have a look at what we're going to be doing today. Here's my agenda. You've probably seen Mike before, you will have seen some of the other speakers in this conference before, but you may not know me, being a newbie here. So I'd just like to start off with something short about me, and then I'd like to know a little bit about you. Then we're going to look at some teaching situations, or 3 teaching situations, which are actually my teaching situations, but may hopefully reflect some of yours. We'll look at practical suggestions to bring more variety into those teaching situations. And then we'll have a little roundup at the end, and if we've got time, then maybe some time for questions as well. Okay, so my aim of this talk really is I'm hoping that you'll be able to take away some practical ideas for your next lessons, because I think that's what you're all here for. Okay, so starting off with me. This is where I grew up. This is where I was born and where I grew up. Could you, if you recognise that place, could you type the name into the box, the name of this city? Now, hi, I got quite a few people who recognise that yes, indeed, this is Brighton on the south coast of England. I don't live there anymore. I will show you where I live these days. This is where I live these days. Now, you may have recognised Brighton, but do you recognise this place? It's not London, no. A few people typing in London. Any other ideas? It's not Bath, it's not Wales, no. Vienna, no. Vienna's actually a bit closer. It's not Trafalgar Square. It does actually look like Nelson's Column, but no, it's not. Munich's very, very near. Let me give you a little clue. Somebody's just come up with the right. It's scrolling really quickly. I can't read that fast. It is indeed Stuttgart. Stuttgart in the south of Germany. And this is where I live. I just live outside of Stuttgart, and I've been living here for the last 20-odd years and teaching in Stuttgart too. So, and as you can see, lots of people say to me, oh, why did you move from England, from the lovely south coast of England to Germany? But as you can see, it's also very attractive. Yes, indeed, someone says, oh, nice. Yes, do come and visit. Okay, so that we can put this into context, for those of you who may be not familiar where these places are, on this little map, I don't know, my cursor probably doesn't work, but the cross shows you where Brighton is. And Königstrasse, somebody's written, and the circle shows you Stuttgart. So as you can see, we're right in the centre of Europe here. It's a lovely city. If you've not been here, do come and visit. Okay, moving on. So professionally, as I said, I work in Stuttgart. This is where I teach. It's a place called the Duale Hochschule, Baden-Württemberg, that's the state. And in English, Duale Hochschule is the Cooperative State University. What you see there are pictures of my students I was teaching just 2 weeks ago. They've allowed me to put these pictures up. It's a special university because of the dual system, cooperative system. It means that all these students, they're doing a bachelor degree. Oh, my slides have moved on, somebody says. Can you tell me which slide you can see? They're fine for me. Okay. You should be seeing a slide that says DHBW and has 2 photographs. Great. Someone says, okay, lovely. Yes, so I want to tell you a little bit about my teaching situation at the moment. These students, they're all actually employed in the big companies around Stuttgart. That's Daimler, Porsche, IBM, Bosch, Siemens, also not necessarily all technical places. There's also Boss, the clothing company, and Adidas, sports company. So these students, they all work for one of these companies, and they spend half their time in the university and half their time in the company. And when they come to the university, they're there to learn business and also Business English, which is where I come in. I've also spent many years teaching in company and at private language schools, but since the beginning of this year I've been concentrating my teaching here at the Duale Hochschule. Okay, so that was my teaching. That's only kind of half of what I do. Moving on to the next slide. Yes. This, if you think, oh, you may have heard my name, hopefully it's because of the teaching materials that I write, especially for Macmillan and One Stop English. You'll see One Stop English on those 3 screenshots there. Yes, I write the Guardian weekly lessons for Macmillan, One Stop English. Excuse me. Okay. Oh, someone says yes. I know. I have to scroll down on the left so I can see what you're writing. Thank you. Yes, the lesson plans are great. That's really nice to know. I love writing the Guardian lessons. I do 2 a month, and Tim Bowen does 2 a month. We have weekly Guardian lessons, and we have the Business Spotlight ones, which I also write once a month. And something that you may not yet know about, but I think you should, because they're so fantastic, are the business top trump cards, which are fairly new. And this is what I was presenting in Prague at the Business English Conference on Saturday. I think there's a lot of potential there. We can have a quick look at those again later. But okay. By the way, if you haven't actually seen this website, One Stop English, really do go and have a look at it, because there's thousands of resources there. Mike mentioned it in his talk earlier, that they're ready to print and go. You just take them into your classroom and you're away. Okay. Moving on to my next slide. You've heard about me. Now I'd like to know something about you. So this is the test poll. Poll 0. I hope you can answer this one. Are you male or female? Could you, I think as Henry tells you, need to look at the little tick box on the left under your name. If you hover over that, you should be able to see A or B, hopefully, and you click which one you are. By the looks of it, we've got a lot more women in the room than men at the moment. Oh, got a C. Henry, what could C be? It's just A or B, please. I can see the numbers. I don't know if you can see the numbers there. Okay, so we've got a lot more women in the room. Wonderful. Moving on. Okay, so don't worry about that one anymore. We're going to move on now to the real polls. This is what I'd really like to know about you. If you're a teacher, do you teach? This will be the next poll. A, in company, B, at a college, something similar to the situation I just described, but also business school. C, if you're at a private or state language school, I realise that could be a bit of a crossover there too between B and C, or D, somewhere else. Now, you see you're already starting there. Oh, we've got a lot of university teachers, a lot of private language schools, yeah. I'm looking at the numbers going up. Oh, at the moment, C is the highest. So the private or state language school. Getting a lot there. This is interesting for me because it helps me know, who I'm talking to, obviously. Let's go down here. Okay. Right, so definitely it seems that most of you are at the private or the state language school, and there's not a lot of somewhere else's. But if you have clicked somewhere else, could you quickly type in where that somewhere else is for me into the chat box there? Homestay students. Okay, so that's not what I thought about before. Any more? private Vauxhall Shore. Yes, I know the Vauxhall Shore. I also taught there for many years. On Skype. Okay, so these are some of you who are teaching from home. Okay, well, I think also with Skype, some of the situations, the tasks that we're going to look at, they'll also be relevant for you. Okay, moving swiftly on. Poll 2. Are your students? I'd like to know the age group of your students, because I think this makes a difference. Mike's been talking about mobile learning, and it could be that the A's are going to be more open to this. So could you now, let me think. Could you now click A, B, C, or D again? And I will I'll clear my screen, and I can see what you're putting. Okay, so a lot of you are teaching students like me, university students. Okay, the younger age group. Not many of you teaching the over 55s. So it looks like we've got a lot of university teachers in the room at the moment. Great, okay. Secondary school, some of you typing in answers. Okay, one last question for you, and because I want to look at some scenarios, a couple of different things we can bring into the lesson for different levels. So I'm going to clear the answers again. Last poll, could you click A, B, C, or D, and tell me what your learners generally their language level is. I've written elementary, and then I've written the A1, A2. For those of you outside Europe, you may not know about the CEF levels, so I've written both just in case. Okay. So the B's are winning on this poll. Okay. Actually, by far the B's. So most of you are teaching this intermediate level A2 to B1, which actually that's probably what we would expect in business English, I think, a lot of the time. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. I'll just move on with my notes. Okay. Moving on to the next slide here. Okay, thanks. I think we'll stop with the polls now. I'm really looking forward to having a look at this afterwards and checking the numbers a bit more carefully, and also having a look at what you've written, because this will help me with future workshops as well. Okay, so the challenge. What is the challenge of bringing variety into the classroom? What I'd like to do is look at 3 different teaching scenarios, as I said, and decide why variety is necessary, and what challenges we may be facing in these teaching situations. And then I'd like to give some practical suggestions that you can hopefully use in your lesson, because that's why you're here, isn't it? Okay. So, next slide. These are 3 teaching scenarios. These are my teaching scenarios. Number 1 is, as I just said, my current teaching scenario, the business university. The number of students in a group do vary. Sometimes there are as few as 12 or 14, or we go up to 30, but this is sort of an average size group. The students are generally 18 to 24 years old, and we have 20 to 30 hours per semester. And the students that I'm teaching are quite an advanced level. They are C1 learners, but they may not be C1 business learners. Their general English tends to be very good. These are actually the future managers. These are the people that we're teaching. I'm teaching there, and they tend to live online. Having said that, I do use a course book, because I think the course book is essential for foundation for these students, to give them really something to hold on to and give our course structure. But having said that, they also expect up-to-date, cutting-edge materials too. And what they really, really need, and this is a challenge, is vocabulary and writing practice. Okay. Business vocabulary and writing practice. Okay. So we're looking at something that we can bring to this group. The second teaching scenario, this is something I don't do right now at the moment, but I've done a lot in the last 5 years. These, I put the "re" in brackets because there could be training courses from the job center. In Germany, it would be the Arbeitsamt, or there could be retraining courses for people who've been made redundant and are looking to improve their skills in the hope of getting a job. So these are job seekers. They tend to come in mixed groups because they're all bundled together, and so it's rather hard to really say what level they're at. But I think that sort of A2, B1 is probably very realistic. And these groups tend to come to me, or they did when I was teaching them, every morning or afternoon for 5 or 6 weeks. Now that's really intensive, and the challenge there, of course, is keeping up motivation. Yeah. So we're going to look at something we can do with that. The third is in company, which I imagine a lot of you also are teaching, especially in Germany. This is a very typical teaching situation. In company, the groups tend to be smaller. They come after work, or sometimes even before work, but I hate that. 90 minutes after work once a week is a typical teaching situation. Has been for me and my colleagues here in Germany once a week. And they tend to be good intermediate level, and the courses are held in the company. Now, the challenge I think there is that they come to you and they're still, their minds, they're still in their work. They may have left an unfinished task on their desk, or they may have come away from a meeting to be there. So that's the first thing, is that their brains are still with their work. And it takes a while to get them into English. The other challenge with these people is that they may have been on their PC all day or reading all day, and they want to do something different. Okay, so they want to kind of get away from their work, but what we want to do with them has also got to be business English relevant. You know? We can't just have a quick chit chat. Well, we can, but that's not necessarily what we want to always do. We want a bit more structure sometimes. Okay. So just a very strange comment there on the side. Right. So I am going straight into some ideas here. These are the 3 suggestions I'm going to give you. We're going to look at the vocabulary in a context way, the hands-on way, and then the holistic way. So I'm going to give you 3 ideas that hopefully you'll be able to use, maybe not tomorrow or today, but sometime in the near future in your class. At a time you think, oh, now I could do something different. Yes, this is what we had a look at in the online conference. I can do that with my students. So we're going to start with the vocabulary in context way. I'm going to explain what this is. So relating this to the students in the university, I told you they need to learn vocabulary. Okay, and they need to do writing. So in our course books, this is a task I actually did a couple of weeks ago. In the course books, we were looking at the units on finance and presentation. And the students were looking at trend words such as rise and fall, where those would be the simple ones, peak and plummet, looking at these kind of trend words. And they were doing quite well as far as it went. But you know what it is? You know that they're understanding what they're reading, but putting it into context is then something else. So I've got a magazine here. I'll show you. Of course, we can go into the internet and we can print things out, but I don't know, in Germany, this is definitely frowned upon. It's an illegal action. We shouldn't really be copying and just handing things out. But what we can do is read to the students, right? So I think if I put this in front of the screen. This is a magazine that I buy, so it's legal here in my house, and it's fantastic because it has lots and lots of little tiny articles that I can use in the classroom just by reading out to the students. So let me see if you can see this one. This says companies in the news. Okay, so the students They told you they want up-to-date information, but we want to look at the vocabulary sorry, should I talk up a little bit? Okay, vocabulary in context. So, my task, what I did with these students is take one of these very short articles and I asked them to listen. I read it out to them. First, they listen just for gist, just for the content. They don't write anything. They listen for understanding. The second time of listening, they listen for the trend words, so for the kind of vocabulary that we've been looking at in the course books. And this time they should make notes. So this is why I've also got a short text, because I don't want them to be writing for hours and hours or getting too stuck. So I've got a short text for them. The third time, they can listen to the other useful chunks of language, because every text is going to throw up some nice ideas too. Right? I'd like you to be a little bit interactive here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the text, the Ryanair text, as I read it to my students. I'm not going to ask you to listen for gist, because we'll assume that we've done that. You're very high level here, obviously. You're not my student, so you can understand the text. But I'd like you to do number 2. I'd like you to listen for the trend words and make notes. And you'll be making notes in the little chat box on the left. So if you hear words like peak and plummet, right, peak and plummet into that box on the left. Okay? Right? So I've got the text in front of me, so I've got to have a little look down. But I'm going to read it out, and you please type in the text, the trend words, okay? This is the text. Ryanair's profits dropped sharply in the quarter ending 30th of June due to rising fuel costs and a lack of last-minute bookings. To combine the loss, the budget airlines pilots have been instructed to fly at a slower pace to cut the fuel bill. Accounts published yesterday reveal that despite an increase in revenue, Ryanair's profits in April-June quarter fell by 21% to 78 million euros. The airline's revenue increased during the period by 5% to 1.3 billion. But fuel costs rose by 6% and now account for 47% of Ryanair's overall expenditure. Hence the order to pilots to slow down and burn less fuel. Ryanair said its profits were also affected by a drop in last-minute summer bookings due to the heatwave in Britain and by the early timing of Easter, which meant the holiday profits were not included in this quarter. Now that's the total text. Okay, so I'm having a little scroll through and I'm having a look at what you've written. Yep, wonderful. Drop sharply, etc., etc. The next screen shows you, this is possible answer, okay? There are multiple answers here, but this is the kind of thing I would be hoping that you were listening, actively listening for. The drop sharply, rising fuel costs, the lack, the loss, to cut and increase, increased as a verb, rose, slow down, etc., etc., okay? Did you get that? This was just task 2. Remember, it was a 3 part. So listen for gist. This is the second part. Then I would read again, and they may be looking at other useful phrases such as not included in this quarter. That might be useful for the students. Yeah. What we would do after this is then to consolidate this, and this is the point that students haven't got the text in front of them, that they then recreate the text in writing purely from their notes. Okay? So this is a kind of consolidation of what we've been doing in the course book, bringing it up to date, looking at an up-to-date business report, and we're getting them to write and use the vocabulary. Okay? So, moving on. How are we doing for time? Yeah, we're doing well. Okay. Moving on to the hands-on retraining suggestion I'm going to give you. The situation, remember we're looking now at the retraining situation I told you about, the job centre, and we're going to assume that it's Friday afternoon, the last day of the first week with this group of students or people looking for jobs and doing a bit of retraining. They've done the basics. We've done introductions. We've looked at positions in companies. The students, they've all come from different business backgrounds, especially if they're from the job centre. They could come from manufacturing, they could come from sales, they could come from anywhere. We really don't know. So it would be great to pool their knowledge, is what I was thinking. And we want to do something to bring everything together that would be motivating for them too. So, what you would need for this task would be a flip chart paper or a large piece of paper. A whiteboard or a blackboard would also work, but large paper if possible. Pens, magazines, glue. I've got a list down here, I have to read this out. And what we're going to do is visually represent a fictional company. They're going to make a company, obviously in English. We're going to set the parameters. The students, ideally, if you have a large group, they're going to work in small groups here. And they're going to sort of devise an organogram of a company. We need to set parameters so they don't go too completely crazy. Each group should decide the type of company, the departments in that company, who might work in each of these departments, and then they should look beyond these departments and think, well, who else might there be in this company? What other positions might there be? Because we as business trainers, we tend to sort of concentrate on sales managers or manufacturing, but we're not actually looking all around the edges maybe, and we should think about the cleaning staff, the people who work in the canteen, the security people. Okay, so we're building a company structure. This is what the task is for the students. If you've got some magazines, you could bring them in and they could cut out some faces. It sounds at first a little bit childish, but I've got to say I've done this with a lot of adult students, and once they get into it and they know that it's a business task, it works very well. Okay. So the task here would be to build on this flip chart paper an organogram, or so company structure, where they're putting at the top the board members, the CEOs, looking at the departments, and building this company. And then, obviously, because we want to have a production too, they're going to make this a poster presentation and going to present this company to the other people in the group, or if it's just a small group, then they're going to present it to you. In which case they'll be hopefully using the language that they've been learning, such as this sales manager is responsible for a team of 5, etc., etc. Using that kind of company structure language. Okay, I call this the hands-on because they're actually getting up, they're moving, they're possibly using scissors, they're definitely using pens, and we're really creating something. And this is the kind of task that can actually take quite a long time, because when they get into it, they generally don't want to stop. So if your lesson is maybe only 60 minutes, I've got a suggestion for you. And I mentioned top trumps earlier on, and if I click onto the next slide, you can see the top trumps business cards that I was talking about earlier actually have cards that you could use for this kind of task. We have there on the left Bob, who is the managing director. We have Reg, who is the company founder. Valerie, the PA to the MD, and they go on. We've got 30 cards, and you can use these cards in a huge variety of ways in the classroom. Hands-on. You can cut them out, stick them on the board. You still make your organogram, okay? But we've got this real hands-on way of utilizing and consolidating and repeating the language we hope they will have learned and are now going to produce. Okay. Right. The first scenario. Remember, that was the in-company one. And if you can see on the left of this picture, we've got the office. This is where the students obviously are probably in their brains, and we maybe want to take them to this, not a happy place, it sounds a little bit too touchy-feely, a business English place, somewhere out of this office. But remember, these are the students who are coming to us still with their work problems on their minds. They may be thinking, oh, I've got to call back so-and-so once I finish with my English lesson, or oh, that report is still on my desk and has to be completed by the end of the day. So I've called this the holistic approach because I do yoga. Okay, and when I go to my yoga lessons, the first thing, one of the first things the teacher tries to do with us is to get us to be in the room, to be in the lesson, to leave the world behind, and to just stay with our yoga thoughts, or in this case, to stay with our English thoughts for the period of the class. After that, they can go back to their business world, to their reports, to their meetings, to the phone calls that still need to be made. But it's, I'm thinking of a way of bringing the students into the English lesson, okay? In yoga, we lie on the floor. I don't want you to get your students to lie on the floor unless you think that would really work with them, okay? But I've got a suggestion how we could put this into a business English learning context. And that would be that you would ask the students to close their eyes for 1 minute. Okay? Just close their eyes. In that 1 minute, and it's not a very long time, they should not do anything apart from listen. Okay? They should listen to what they hear about around them. They're in company students, remember? So it's quite likely that they'll be hearing what's going on in the rooms outside the classroom. If the students, not everybody's very good at active listening in that way, so maybe a tip would be to tell them to start outside, so listen to what they can hear far away, and maybe the traffic, maybe people outside, and to then bring their listening, focusing their listening into the room, to the desk, to the table in front of them. Okay. Remember, they're doing nothing but listening, but also maybe making a mental note of what they hear. Sorry. Okay. After the 1 minute, you tell them to open their eyes, but still say nothing. Okay. In the 2 minutes that follow, they should make notes about what they heard. Notes in English, if at all possible. Okay. Lower level could do it in their own language if you think that's better, but let's try and get it into English. Okay, so that's 2 minutes of silent writing. And I'm going to show you, this is something I did with a group of 6, and these are some of the notes that they came up with. I've put Mr. X because I don't need to put the names. But they heard the cars outside. They could hear machines in the next room. They heard some shouting going on out in the street. There were people walking up and down the corridors. These are the kind of things that they were hearing far away. And then as they were coming a bit closer in, they could also hear the coffee machine. We had a little canteen room next door where they heard the machine, the fridge, and some machinery outside. And then we came into the room, and they could hear the ticking of the clock, and I think somebody got a text message within that time, so they heard the bluing of the text message. Okay, so what we've got here are some random notes. They're not actually very useful for us at this point. So we need to take this task a little bit further and turn it into something that's actually going to be useful for the students. So what I did was I then asked them to turn these random words into sentences, more descriptive sentences. And when they elaborated, and I allowed them to work obviously together at this point, they elaborated and they came up with sentences like this, which actually now starts to look like something that we really want them to produce. Yes? Have a quick little read through that. I think I had to input the word humming, but, well, that's the learning part, isn't it? Okay. This was a kind of a B2 level group, so quite good, a very good intermediate level they were. Okay, right. after this, then it's up to you where you want to take this, whether you want to continue with this, what's been written down and talk about this, or whether you then go back to your course book. Okay. But anyway, in any case, the students were at this point now with me in the room, ready to learn English, and this was my aim. Okay? Not all students are happy with closing their eyes. If you find that's the case, there's an option B, which is looking. Instead of listening, they should look. I don't know if you've ever heard of this man, John Ruskin. He's being called the master of word painting because in his writing it's very, very descriptive. And he didn't just talk about a mountain. He talked about the colours of the mountains and all the shadows and the trees. And it was very, very descriptive. Okay. And as you can see the quote here, the greatest thing a human soul ever does in this world is to see something and tell what it saw in a plain way. So we can do this same kind of focusing task by looking, but looking in a way that we don't usually we just scan around the room and sorry, my head moved very quickly in the video there, and we just pick out the bits we want to look at, but rarely do we look. In my culture, it would be left to right, and really sort of talk about what we see in the room in front of us, or what we see on a machine in front of us, what we see on the photo in a company brochure in front of us. Okay, so another way to do this task would be to get the students to describe very, very clearly what they see in detail, yeah? And this will help focus, it will help improve vocabulary, descriptive skills. I found this especially with engineers. I had a group of engineers, and they liked that very much because instead of just saying, oh, look, there's a machine over there, we could say, well, on the top left-hand side of the machine, there's a lever. Underneath that lever, we can see the emergency stop button, for example. And this forced them, in a way, to come out with language that they would need if they were troubleshooting, because these were guys that were selling machinery and then going to the customer and sorting them out. So they needed instructing the customer how to use the machines. So they needed words like emergency stop button and lever, and they needed to be able to describe this machine in detail to the customer to be able to explain how to fix something that went wrong or how to operate the machine. Okay, so this will be an alternative to listening, is the very active looking. Active looking. I may have made up that term. Okay, never mind. Right. So, looking at the time, it's 20 to 1 here in Germany. 20 to 12 in England. That means we're coming actually to the end of this session. I'd like just to have a little quick review of what I've been talking about. We've looked at the 3 teaching scenarios and some challenges that we might find in these scenarios. And I've given you 3 or even 4 possible ways of bringing variety into these teaching scenarios, but without chucking out the course book, without moving away from your curriculum, without moving away from your course design, but just to bring you a bit more variety in there, and hopefully to keep students with you, to motivate them, to focus them. And the ways that we looked at was the vocabulary and context way, remember, with the trend words there. But it doesn't have to be trend words, it can be whatever you're working on at the time. It's very easy to find short texts for this. The hands-on way, so you're getting them up and moving, and remember you can make your own, or we're talking about the cards, or you can download these cards from onestopenglish.com. And the last way was the holistic way. These are my terminologies, by the way. I don't think they're, you probably find these in methodology books yet. The holistic way of getting the students to be with you in the classroom and to start producing business vocabulary. Okay? So maybe none of these will work with your students, but maybe they will. You could try them out. Or maybe I've just given you a little bit of food for thought. I think actually might use that term, so maybe that should be a high frequency term, food for thought. Yes, something to think about, and something you may be able to use at some point or other in your teaching scenarios. And I think at this point I would, let's see if this works. If there are any questions. Henry, does this work?
Hi. Hi, Karen.
Do you have any questions? Yep. Hi, Henry.
Yep. If you've got any questions, guys, then now's your chance to ask them to Karen quickly before our next talk starts. So I'll just hand you back and use the chat box to write to Karen. Thanks.
Wow. Goodness me, but so many ideas are coming here. I saw one just now that said, do I use a ball, I think it was. And I must say, I don't personally. I don't like that. I could use it with, I've used string. I've used string on the floor to make maps and get people to stand where they work, sort of the cross in the middle of the string. So there's a cross with string, and the cross is where we are, and the four ends of the strings are north, south, east, west, and they stand where they live, or with students where the companies are. But I haven't actually used fluffy balls. Fluffy balls. Which newspaper do I subscribe to? Somebody's asked. I do subscribe to The Guardian weekly because I live in Germany, so I get that sent out to me. I don't read a daily. I do read a daily newspaper. I also subscribe to the Stuttgarter Zeitung, which is useful for learning German. And I do subscribe to The Week magazine, which I held up earlier on and showed you that I do sometimes try to use. Oh, tips for homework, please. Oh, I think that's another talk. Cutting a text, distribute, collective putting it back together. Yep, definitely. Again, I would just say be careful of copyright issues there. Somebody asked what coursebook I use for my students at university. At the moment, well, we've been through a variety of ones of coursebooks, and at the moment I'm using one that is written especially for our students, I must say, from a German company. So, how do you give out homework? That's interesting, written in very big letters. I've got to pass that one on to another workshop, I think. Okay, because I do believe it's time for me to leave. Oh, can I use Top Trumps in a virtual classroom? Yes, you can, but I think I should write a worksheet on that one. I think I'll make a note of that one, and hopefully I could write a workshop. I think it's time for me to leave. I've got quite a dry voice, quite a dry throat now. I need to have a drink, but it's been lovely, and I can't believe that I've talked non-stop for 45 minutes. So thank you all very much for listening. I'm going to hand over to John Allison now, who's a lovely man who I've also worked with. I've worked with Mike and John, so it's great to be here on this online conference, Business English Day, with the two of them. But it's a great week ahead of us too. I don't know how any of us are going to get any work done. Henry, can I hand back over to you now?
Thank you, Karen. Yes, you may. Thanks for a brilliant talk. I hope you can get some rest now after your busy weekend in Prague and then coming back to deliver the talk for us. Thanks for that. Hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. Please keep sharing your thoughts on Twitter, guys. I'm seeing lots of nice messages coming in. Karen, I'll send some of those your way later. We're using the hashtag, which I'm just going to share in the chat box now. Once again, there'll be a short 5-10 minute break now while I get John set up so that he can deliver the final talk of this morning's business session. Karen, if you want to just say a last goodbye, now's a chance to thank everyone for coming today.
Indeed, I'd love to. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for coming, and I hope that my daughter's made me some lunch downstairs. So, bye-bye. I'm going to pop my
fingers crossed.
Bye.
It's made me hungry. Thanks, Karen. Okay, like I said, you can now go away and get yourselves all a snack as well if your stomachs are rumbling too. We'll be hopefully back underway at midday our time. That's GMT, because we're in London, don't forget. When John will be taking over the reins, and his talk's going to concentrate on developing people skills in business English. Okay, so I'll see you back then for that. Cheers.
Living rooms, thank you for inviting me into your computers, wherever you are today. Thank you for being with us today. So I'm going to talk about developing people skills in business English. And in a moment or two, I'll explain exactly what I mean by that. But to begin with, I'd like to just ask you a question. Many of you will have found yourselves in the situation of having to interview an English teacher to recruit somebody. And if you haven't actually done that yourself, I'm sure that with your students you've been in the situation of role-playing job interviews. So this should be familiar. So let's imagine that you've got a candidate, and or you've got several candidates, and amongst your candidates you've got somebody who's got an MA in applied linguistics, you've got somebody who's got a great ability to get people to talk, and you've got somebody who speaks fluent Spanish, Portuguese, Russian and Mandarin. So which of those are you going to look for? Which of those is going to be your top priority in recruiting a teacher? So can I just ask you, I'm not sure if I've got the technology right. I think you should be able to click A, B, or C, and we've got some answers coming in. Great. So I'll just give you a moment or two to choose those. Great. Okay, so we've got an overwhelming majority of Bs. We've got a few A's and a very few C's, and of course there may be situations where those particular qualities and skills could be very useful. But it seems that most people would agree with me that the most important thing for an English teacher is the ability to get people to talk. And that is a perfect example in our own profession of a people skill, an essential people skill. And if you have the opportunity to talk to people in HR, you'll find that they will undoubtedly tell you when they're recruiting at the moment, these people skills are more and more the most important thing they're looking for. Sure, qualifications are important, experience is important, but especially in a world where people have more and more qualifications, those people skills are becoming something absolutely essential. And so to reflect that, you'll see that there is now a new generation of business English materials. I've been working for the last few years particularly on the business, also on in company, and you'll see now in the new editions of this type of course book that alongside the language skills, alongside the communication skills, meetings, presentations, telephoning, all the familiar things that business English students need to do, you'll also see more and more evidence of activities which will allow people to develop their people skills. So that's what I want to talk about today. So here's my little program for the talk. I'd like to look first of all at what exactly are these people skills. You might be more familiar with the term soft skills, emotional intelligence, whatever. There are lots of ways we can talk about these things, but we're all talking about the same thing. So what exactly are they? We'll then go on to think about why. Why should we be developing people skills in the business English classroom? And then have a look at some examples of how we can do that. And finally, I hope we'll have a little time for any questions you may have and a little discussion of the topic at the end. So let's move straight on and think about what exactly these people skills are. I've got 5 examples here. I'm not sure actually whether we can choose out of 5. I know we can choose from 4, but let's see. I'd like you to look at these and to decide which of these 5 skills are, or qualities are, a people skill. So which one is the people skill? Can you choose A, B, C, D, or E? I'll give you a few moments to make your choice. Think about that. Maybe if you're with other people, you can talk about it for a moment. And we've got some results coming in. Okay, quite a spread. We seem to have, we've got quite a lot of votes for quite a lot for A, a bit more for B, a bit less for C, a bit less again for D, and not very many for E, for summarizing. Okay, well, this is a bit of a trick question in a sense, because all these things overlap, and so you could claim that there are people skills involved. For me, A, asking questions is essentially a language skill. As you know very well, it's something that a lot of students struggle with simply because they don't have the language, the structures, the reflexes to be able to ask questions efficiently. So for me, that one's more a language skill. Negotiating, I would categorize more as a communication skill. It's something that, again, we're all familiar with teaching, and it involves language skills, and of course, to do well, it also involves people skills. And you will probably find it quite difficult to negotiate well if you don't have at least some people skills. But again, it's something which is taught essentially as a negotiating skill. For me, C, mediation, this is essentially a people skill. It's all about handling other people, understanding other people's points of view, empathizing with them, creating a link, finding solutions together. So the success of that task, it relies very much on how well you can get on with other people. D, charisma, is, I think, probably something that you're born with. You have it or you don't. Great leaders, some of our politicians are very charismatic, but they don't necessarily have fantastic people skills. The two perhaps often go together, but I think that's something else. And E, summarizing, I think again is perhaps a communication skill, some language skills involved in that as well. If you like, where I would make the difference is that A, B, E, these are things that we habitually teach in the business English classroom. C, mediation, is something that until now we probably haven't spent a lot of time working on, and something that relies very heavily on people skills to be successful. So no absolute right answers there, but I would give you mediation as an example a people skill. Let me give you another example. Perhaps the best way to demonstrate people skills is using video, and I've given myself perhaps an impossible challenge today of trying to talk to you about video without actually being able to show you any video. Wonderful as this conferencing technology is, the webinar doesn't actually allow me to show you video. So I would have loved to show you some clips from the new videos that come with the second edition of In Company. Unfortunately, I can just show you pictures and encourage you to go and find those videos yourselves and have a look at them if you're interested. So here's one example, and here in a picture you can see Neil, who has just been given a nice cup of tea by his colleague Val. Neil's the boss, Val is a member of his team. So Neil picks up his cup of tea and says, Val cleverly says, "Don't think I heard the magic word." Neil realizes that he's not really being very polite and says, "Thanks, Val." So a very simple exchange, but Val is illustrating several useful people skills. First of all, she's managing up. She's managing her manager, which is an extremely useful skill and a difficult one to do well. Secondly, she's illustrating the useful skill of assertiveness. She's not allowing this impoliteness to go unpassed. She's drawing Neil's attention to it and making it clear that his behavior is not acceptable. At the same time, she's doing it in a very diplomatic way, so she's also illustrating another people skill, diplomacy, using a little bit of humour. Don't think I heard the magic word. And so being assertive, but in a nice, diplomatic, acceptable way. So in that very simple exchange, there you've got useful examples of some people skills. Here's another one from the same video. This time Neil is talking to Riley, who's a junior member of the team and who's arrived late for the meeting, having been held up in traffic. Neil says, Neil's trying to delegate here. You're always saying we should get into social media marketing. Riley says, yeah, but surely somebody else. She's very busy. She's got too much to do already. And Neil says, it's not rocket science. You can do a couple of tweets a day. So here's another way that video works very well, showing first of all how not to do it, how not to delegate. And Neil illustrates that very clearly. Val then has a go and shows a much better way to delegate. She says to Riley, you know most about it, and we think you're the person for the job. You're great with words, and I think you do a terrific job. So very quickly, Riley starts to feel better about it and to get interested in the task. So a much more successful version of delegating. So those are a couple of examples of the people skills that we're talking about. Here's a little list. These are some of the people skills that you'll find in the business upper intermediate and advanced. There are also people skills in the other levels, but as the level of language competence goes up, it becomes easier and more useful to work on these other skills. So let's think about why. Why should we be teaching people skills in a business English classroom when we're there to teach business English? Well, essentially because I feel that we can really bring added value to our learners. let's think about different kinds of learners. First of all, pre-service learners, people who are studying at university, business school, college, or young people who are just starting their career, who don't yet know a lot about the world of business. These people's skills are really essential tools for their business career, and we can really help them to develop very much skills which are very marketable on today's job market. They will be, as soon as they finish their courses, they'll be in competition for jobs with people with similar qualifications, similar experience, and as the HR people will tell you, having good people skills, being able to demonstrate those good people skills, really gives a competitive edge. So there's something, an area I think we can really bring extra value to our learners. Let's think now about in-service learners, people in companies, the typical people that you teach on-site or in a school who need their English, need to maintain a good level of English for their business. And here we can perhaps assume that these people already have decent people skills, hopefully. It's not always the case. And here the key word for me is the old expression, use 'em or lose 'em. Any kind of skill, if you don't practice it, if you don't use it regularly, you tend to lose it. Whether it's a language or whether it's the ability to ski or to type, whatever it is, if you don't use it regularly, then you lose it. So first of all, just directing the attention of our in-service learners towards these people skills gives them the opportunity to practice them, to polish their skills, to make sure that they're getting the best out of the kind of situations where these skills are needed. And also, a second very important area is in guiding language choices. If you don't think about the people skills, if you're not aware of how language affects your relationships with other people, then you're perhaps not going to use the most appropriate language in every situation. I'm sure most people have been in this sort of situation in the classroom where you think of the old proverb, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Very often you'll spend a long time teaching, for example, the language of diplomacy or indirect questions, and then you set up a role play where you're hoping that your students are going to use this language, and they happily do everything being very direct, not diplomatic, no indirect questions, lots of blunt questions, which can be very frustrating. I found that bringing in a people skills context and focusing attention on the importance of dealing with people in an appropriate way really helps to focus learners' attention on the right language, so to guide those language choices and get over this lead a horse to water paradox. And finally, thinking about general English, my topic today is in business English, but probably like me, most people also teach general English classes from time to time. And people skills, I think, also have a role to play here in bringing added value because they are intrinsically interesting. Going back to the videos, if you show general English learners the sort of videos that we've just looked at, they will find them fascinating because they're about people. And there's nothing that we like more than talking about other people and analyzing the way people interact and what they're doing wrong, what they're doing right. So even in a general English context, I think these people skills can provide a very useful context for general English language work. So I hope that you're still with me and that you're following what I've said. I'd like to do a little check. I've talked about what these people's skills are. I've also talked a little bit about why I think we should use them, develop them in the classroom. So I'm going to ask you just to make a little choice. It's a yes/no choice, and I want you to tell me whether you think that people's skills can bring added value to your classroom. I'm going to have to change the voting system to yes or no. I'm not sure if I remember quite how to do that. So bear with me for a moment. Now where do I find the yes or no? Sorry, I've just lost that. Here we are. Yes, no. Great. So, great, you're voting. And yeah, we're getting lots and lots of yeses, so that's reassuring. And a very few no's. Okay, great. Thank you for your feedback. For those who said no, then I imagine that perhaps you may have very specific teaching situations where it might not be appropriate, and fair enough, I can understand that. And perhaps also I need a bit more time to convince you. So I'll continue and hope that if you said no, that I can still persuade you. So let me move on and give you some examples of how we can teach people skills in the classroom. Teach is perhaps the wrong word. I should use develop rather than teach. So like language skills, people skills can be developed in different ways. And again, like language schools, we can take a deductive approach where we start from the rules and work towards the practice. Or we can take an inductive approach where we start from examples and we try to work out the rules. So here's an example of a deductive approach. This is from the intermediate level of the business, where we first of all ask students to have a look at some examples of their assertive rights in the workplace. Okay, so I'll ask students to read through those and to talk about what exactly they involve. And then we'll move on to a little activity. So one of those, well, here's a sample that might be heard in the workplace. When I want your opinion, I'll ask for it. So first of all, I'll ask trainees to think about which of their assertive rights this is contravening, and hopefully they will answer it's the right to a fair hearing for your opinions. Having established that, we can then think about how to deal with this sort of situation. What is the best way to respond to this kind of statement? So 3 possible answers, A, B, or C. So once again, can I give you a couple of minutes to a couple of moments just to think about that and to make a choice? A, B, or C, and C is ever so tempting for somebody. Yeah, it is tempting, but probably going to get you into a fight. Yeah, I have to switch the poll. Okay, I think that's done. Okay, so somebody says this is not clear. I'm sorry. So if your boss says, "When I want your opinion, I'll ask for it," would you answer A, B, or C? So we've got a very clear majority of Bs, which is reassuring, because most people will be assertive and not just let this rather rude statement go, but explain that exchanging views will be helpful to move forward, rather than A, which, as Jacob is just telling us, sounds very passive, and C is very aggressive, so that's probably just going to get you into a fight. And fighting with your boss generally isn't a terribly good idea. Okay, here's another example. Your boss says, "What do you mean you can't work late tonight?" And the assertive right, which he is denying you, is the right to refuse a request without feeling guilty or selfish. So, once again, would you like to choose A, B, or C? Which is the most appropriate answer? Excuse me, I just wet the whistle as you vote on that one. So I think very clearly, again, almost everybody agrees that B is the most assertive response. Some people will be tempted to be very cooperative and agree with A, "Oh, all right, then I'll do it." But that might be seen as being too submissive. And again, C, "You should have planned ahead. I knew this would happen," is probably a little bit too aggressive, depending on your relationship with your boss. But most bosses will probably not like that very much. Okay, so that was a deductive approach. Here's an example of an inductive approach. Again, unfortunately, I can't play you audio on the webinar. So you'll have to imagine this. There are two versions of a conversation between an intern and her supervisor, and in the first version, Simon is quite direct, and so we ask students to choose the adjectives which describe Simon's behavior. So he's impatient, a bit dogmatic, very firm, rather authoritarian, and towards the end even rather threatening. The second version is a much better version. Here Simon is a good listener, he's diplomatic, he's friendly, he's still firm, and he's frank, and the result is much more positive. So then we can ask students to discuss questions about why. Why is the communication style more effective in version 2? What's different? Are there situations, and probably yes, there are, sometimes when a more directive, authoritarian style is more appropriate. And there's also the cultural aspect, depending on the country, on the culture, on the corporate culture as well. Which style would be more acceptable, which would be more effective. It's all about adapting to different situations. So then the next stage of that is looking at language for being diplomatic, looking at examples of modal verbs, introductory phrases, negative questions. And then a nice exercise which you've probably done for telephoning, when you have, first of all, you have a rude dialogue, and then you ask students to improve it, so they can have a bit of fun reading the rude dialogue together. You disagreed with the boss this morning. Not a good idea. So what? I was right. He was wrong. But you're always so aggressive. And so on, and then we can ask them to make improvements, make the dialogue more diplomatic, and then read it through the final version, which will be much more acceptable. So that's an example of an inductive approach. I've stressed the point that the role of people skills in business English is very much in terms of guiding language choices. And this becomes very clear in decision-making activities. Some of you may have done these dilemma activities. They're a series of situations where students are asked to make a decision. In this example, you arrive in your office to find a message from Laura, your assistant, who says that the CEO wants a presentation of the new quality procedures for Thursday morning. So you're very busy, you don't have very much time. How do you respond? You've got 4 choices, A, B, C, or D. So once again, would you like to tell me what you think? Which is the best response, A, B, C, or D? Can I have your votes on that? I'll give you a moment more. Okay, so we have a very, very big majority for D. Interesting. Well, you know as much about it as I do now, Laura. How would you feel about making the presentation yourself? So, presenting the task in a positive manner, trying to motivate Laura to take over the responsibility. I don't think anybody's chosen A, so obviously that's not a very good way to manage people. B, you might be tempted to say, oh, they could have told me earlier, but it could be perceived as being critical of management of the organization, so perhaps not the best way to speak to your team members. And C, okay, it's frank, but perhaps not the best way to motivate Laura to take over the task. So we seem to be clearly in agreement with that. We chose that answer, and so we're told in the next screen that it's a good solution, presenting the task in a positive way, etc., etc., and we score 3 points and carry on with the game. Another very good way, and very obvious way perhaps, of developing people's skills is through role play. And it's always nice to have a video to illustrate the role play. And there are 2 ways of using a video of a role play. Either showing the video before you ask your students to role play the situation, which may be helpful if you have a weaker class, people who need more guidance, perhaps find it hard to imagine a situation and role play it. And for many stronger students, they will enjoy doing their own role play first and then comparing native speakers doing the same task in the video. So here you've got a classic role play set up, a meeting between a sales manager and an insurance salesperson. But you'll notice that there are 3 roles. Very often, when we're doing pair work or small group work, if we have an odd number, we may ask one student to observe or to prompt to help the others. But this time, the 3rd person in the group has an essential role. Their role is to observe the interview, particularly looking at examples of people skills, and then to give students A and B feedback when they're finished. Not feedback on the language particularly, but specifically on the way that they interacted with each other on their people skills. So we're inviting speaker C, student C, to be a consultant. And the interesting thing here is that we're used to doing feedback as teachers, being the expert in the classroom and being probably the only person who can give feedback. When you're working on people skills, you have a wonderful opportunity to involve your students, to empower them as consultants, because they may know as much as anybody else, as much as you, as much as me, about people skills, and even if they're not experts in the field, they will have something to say about every interaction. So this is an activity which works very well, raising people's awareness of how they're interacting, do the role play, and then ask speaker C to give them some feedback. And I've been really astonished doing this activity, just how perceptive students can be in analysing exactly what's been going on, where there were problems, why the problems arose, what their colleagues could do to avoid those. It's a safe situation because it's a role play, it's not reality, and some students will have fun role playing a person who is being too aggressive or too submissive. But I think you'll be surprised if you try this, that you get a lot of very, very interesting and perceptive comments from the consultants. And then obviously the next role play you change the roles around so that everybody gets a turn at being the consultant. It's been very nice to look at the video of the same situation and compare what they said, how they related to each other. So this is a still from a video from the upper intermediate level of the business. A nice role play between the sales manager and the insurance salesman on the left. And then after that, we can also compare student C's contributions with the comments from a professional communications coach. So each of these videos is followed by a short analysis by the communications coach, talking about, amongst other things, the people skills that the characters displayed. So that's something that works really nicely and is very, very productive in the classroom. Suddenly we've got a whole lot of material to talk about, which is not language, which is not technical business content, but which is people skills. It's talking about how people relate to each other and how language affects their relationship. So I encourage you to try it, and I think that your students will have great fun with this. While we're on the subject of video, just a quick checklist, a reminder of different ways of using these kinds of video, any video, but particularly this works well for people skills. Prediction, you can keep pausing the video and asking people to predict what's going to happen next, what people are going to say next. We can do silent viewing, asking students to suggest what people should say in a situation. We can do jigsaw viewing. The previous example I've just showed you, the sales manager and the insurance salesman, we actually have two situations. In the first situation, the sales manager is criticizing poor behavior by the insurance salesman, and in the second situation, she's praising the salesman for very good behavior. So a nice way to work with that is to divide your class into two, have half the class watch the first situation, the other half watch the second situation. They're not very long, they're only 3 or 4 minutes, so you can put half your class outside for 5 minutes, and then come in and share, exchange what they've seen. So that's a nice way of working with video. You can elicit the analysis of the people skills, of the communication from your students, and then you can compare that with the expert view, the communications coach. You can have a little role play. You can set up the prosecution and defense, where student A has to defend the salesman's poor behavior, find excuses, where student B will be the prosecutor and argue that it's not acceptable. And then you can role-play exactly the same situation or a similar situation that you can devise yourself or have your students devise. So that's just a quick reminder of some different ways to use video. And those videos you'll find in the new edition of the Business 2.0. You'll find them both on the e-workbook that comes on a disc with the student's book, and you'll also find them on the teacher's resource disc. So do have a look at those. I think you'll find they're a really nice resource, nice way to bring something new into your classroom. So just to summarize how we can develop people's skills, I think there are 4 important stages, and you won't be surprised to see that it's very similar to teaching language skills. The first stage is to raise your students' awareness of those skills. Secondly, to guide their language choices. Thirdly, provide opportunities to practice those in different situations. And fourthly, to provide feedback. And as I pointed out a moment ago, the really fascinating part of this is that the feedback can come from the students, not just from the teacher. So, we've talked about what people skills are, we've talked about why use people skills in the classroom, and I've talked about how, some ways of developing these people skills. So here's your final question from me, before you ask me any questions you want. Are you ready to develop people skills in your classroom? So I'd like to hear from you. And again, I need to switch to a yes or no answer, which I haven't worked out how to do. So if we can sort that out, yes. So are you ready to develop people skills in your classroom? And I'm very pleased to say that we've got a very, very big majority of yeses. Just got three no's for the moment, and nearly 100, more than 150 yeses. So that's great. Obviously, as I said before, I'm very prepared to believe that there may be very specific situations where it might not be appropriate. But as teachers, you, by definition, you already possess well-developed people skills, so you're in a good position to be able to judge whether or not it's appropriate to use this kind of content. And I think in the vast majority of cases, it will be. So that brings me to the end of what I wanted to say. I think we're just about on time. So if you have comments or questions, I'll be very happy to open the discussion to the room. Feel free to ask any questions if anything wasn't clear. Make any comments, reactions. I'll give you a moment if you want to type in anything that you'd like to contribute, any points you'd like to discuss. Well, it seems either nobody has understood anything of what I'm talking about, or everybody has understood absolutely everything, and everybody agrees with everything I've said. I may have said one or two stupid things, but nobody seems to have picked up on those.
Hi, John. It's Henry.
Hi.
I've seen a couple of questions come in. How about if I put them to you, and then we can try and do it that way? So there's one come in that says, any specific tips on teaching people skills in one-to-one business lessons?
One-to-one. Well, one-to-one, I think I would approach in much the same way. I think all the examples of the activities that I've demonstrated today will work in one-to-one, with the exception of the third role in the role play. What you can do in one-to-one is record your role plays, either just audio on a laptop, for example, or even on the phone. If you have an iPhone, you can record it in video. That's a nice way. So you can do the role play with your one-to-one student and then review it together. And so your one-to-one student can actually do two things. So be in the role play and then also be the consultant and give feedback on the people's skills in that role play. So yes, by all means, one-to-one works very well.
Great. One more's come in from Marta as well, John, if you have time to answer. It's asking how to deal with intercultural differences when developing people skills.
Yeah, that's a very good question and a pretty big question. And I think very quickly, when you start working on people's skills, you get into the area of intercultural skills as well. I think they very much go together, and it's another fascinating aspect. We mentioned it briefly in passing. How would this work? This situation that we've looked at. For example, if we take Neil at the beginning, not saying thank you for his cup of tea. How would that work in different countries? In some countries, it would be seen as very impolite. I think in the UK, that would definitely be the case. In other countries, it might be seen as normal for the boss to receive a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and not expect to acknowledge that. And as always with cross-cultural topics, when you have a class of people, the more the merrier. If they've been to different countries, if they have experience of different cultures, or working in different companies even, it's fabulous to be able to compare those experiences. There are usually no right or wrong answers, and there aren't right or wrong answers about people's skills. But I think most people will agree on the effect that different behaviours and different language use can have. So yeah, I would definitely try to develop that intercultural aspect.
Thanks, John. One last question, I think, and that's come from Denise. She's asking about role play and saying it's sometimes difficult to get managers to interact in role plays where they are in a session with people that work under them. But should managers always role play in their own roles? How would you tackle that?
Yeah, that can be a very tricky one. I understand exactly where that question is coming from. I think you have to be very careful in this situation, but I think I would stress that it's a role play rather than a simulation. In a simulation, then you're usually asking people to be themselves. In a role play, you can invite the manager to be overly aggressive, or you can invite the subordinate to be very passive, to play a role. So if you like, you can put up safety barriers. You know, in this role play, okay, if the manager is playing the manager, then he's not really playing himself. He's playing the role of a manager. So it'll be okay to say, well, you were really quite aggressive there, because we're not criticizing his personality, his behavior as himself, but the role he was playing. And of course, what's great fun and most people will enjoy is to invert the roles and to have the manager play the role of the employee and the employee play the role of the manager. But sure, it's something that you've got to be quite careful with. I hope that answers the question. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, then let me just say thank you very much to everybody for being here. For those of you who started at 9 o'clock this morning, you've had quite a long, but I'm sure a useful morning. So well done with that. I guess for most people it'll be time to go and get something for lunch. So thank you very much again to everybody for being with us. And hope you'll be able to continue to join us for the rest of the week. I thank you, Henry, for your organisation.
Thanks,
Henry,
John. No problem.
Hand over to you.
It's a pleasure to listen to your talk. Thanks for taking the time to present as part of the conference.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure. Okay, thank you everybody, and have a nice day. Bye-bye now.
That's right. Yep, I'm here. Hopefully everyone can see me. No problem. Take care, John. Hope everyone. So that was the last of the talks for this morning's business session. Thanks to everyone who attended. I've seen lots of questions flying in the chat box about certificates. Yes, the answer to that is that they'll be emailed out to you under the email address that you all registered for the session with. So look out for an email from us with that, and it will contain as well the link to the recording as soon as that's available. Don't forget also you can download the PowerPoint presentations for all of the talks. I think some people are losing me here. Is it any better now? Am I any louder? Seems that we're just, yeah, the connection's just fading away right at the end. So I'll just sum up quickly. Yes, if you've got any further questions, then keep emailing online.conference@macmillan.com. We'll try and forward on as many of those as we can to the speakers today. I'll include John's LinkedIn profile on the email as well for you guys who are wanting to get in touch with him. So I'm going to leave now, and the next session will be the primary session, which starts at 2 o'clock our time. I'm including a link here to that. So if you haven't already registered for that and you want to come along, then that's what you'll need. You'll be able to get in the room in about half an hour. I'm going to go away now and set that up. And remember, that's in a